Hey, good evening. I call the work session of the March 9th, 2023 meeting to order. And the first thing on the agenda is a consideration of work session and regular meeting agendas. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the work session and the regular meeting agendas of March 9th, 2023 as printed. That they be approved.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ketzker, could you call the roll, please? Oh, I need a second.
I'll second that.
Very good.
Let's all second.
Now I need a roll call.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And that brings us to the update for the Virginia America 250 Commission Local
Yay.
Committee. Ms. Beauregard,
Ms. Cheryl Wagner, our tourism director, will quickly brief you on this item.
welcome.
Thank you so much. And I will be very quick about this. So you passed a resolution. So this is a follow-up. You passed the resolution on January 26th. And this is the plan for the committee. So I have contacted several different organizations, and I'll just run through those really quickly. The Frontier Culture Museum, the Sons of American Revolution, and the 29th Division Museum, Daughters of the American Revolution, the African American Heritage Festival, Augusta County Historical Society, Woodrow Wilson Presidential Library and Museum, the American Shakespeare Center, Happy Birthday America, Staunton City Schools, Mary Baldwin University, Heifetz International Music Institute, Staunton Music Festival, Shenandoah Valley Juneteenth Committee, the Staunton Augusta County African American Research Society, the Monacan Indian Nation, Staunton Historical Society, the Staunton Augusta Arts Center, and the Booker T. Washington Alumni Association. So
Wow.
there's a lot of folks.
You've been busy.
Yeah.
Good job.
I have been very busy trying to get people on board. I just want to let you know this weekend I'll be spending it in Williamsburg. It's the kickoff event for all of the states that will be celebrating, and all of Virginia localities will be there as well. So that's where I'll be. Yes. Do I have a question?
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Yeah. This committee their role is not to plan commemorative events. This is our role. The events will be planned by those organizations that are represented, not as a committee, because a committee that big could never plan an event. Just like the Revolutionary War weekend at the Frontier Culture Museum is an example. Happy Birthday America at Gypsy Hill Park is another example. So the purpose of the committee is to organize a timeline of Staunton events so they don't overlap, to promote the local activities through the VA 250 Commission, the state commission, to encourage local partnerships and idea sharing, and to assist with grant funding and other available programs through the state. And that's all I have.
Succinct, very well done.
Thank you.
Sounds like you're
Any
off and running.
I am.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for
Thank
everything
you
you
for
do.
everything you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any questions? You escaped with no questions.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the update on services provided by Valley Mission and Community Services Board to the city's homeless population. Ms. Beauregard.
Sure. I invited Susan Richardson of the Valley Mission and Lydia Campbell of Community Services Board to just provide some information on this. And there's been a lot of talk recently about warm shelters and requests and information. So I thought it'd be good to bring both of them in to provide information and answer any questions you might have. So I'll hand it over to Ms. Richardson.
All right, thank you. Thank you, council, for having Lydia Campbell and I this evening. We're very happy to be here. I just wanted to provide a quick update about Valley Mission. I know a lot of you on the council and many of you have been to visit us. I would invite any of you to come by for a tour anytime you like. We'd love to show you around and tell you more about our services. Valley Mission, essentially, we can house up to 125, 130 individuals. Those folks do live with us 24 hours a day. We have a male dorm that can hold 60 clients, a female dorm that can hold 30 clients, and then we have 9 family rooms. And so each of those 9 family rooms, the occupancy is variable, but we do try to max out our capacity at like 120 or 125. Currently today, we have 82 clients. 12 of those are kids. We are one of the few shelters in the region that accepts both singles and families. And so we have a very diverse population right now. I know things have been very challenging the last couple of years because we've had so many folks who've become homeless, been experiencing homelessness. And so as a result, we really have to coordinate. And that's what Lydia is going to talk more about, our Valley Homeless Connection, with the purpose of which is to prioritize housing. I wanted to talk a little bit about some mission myths. I hear a lot of mission myths around. One of the myths is that our clients have to have an ID. That is not necessarily the case. While we prefer it, we have many ways to find out who everyone is. And so anyone who comes to us that don't necessarily have an ID, we will help them get one. We know that part of experiencing homelessness is having difficulty with keeping up with important documents and such. And so we have a strong belief that we can help them get those items once they arrive to us. Another mission myth is that we ask our clients to leave every morning. That is not the case. We have a huge day room in the basement. We have a state-of-the-art computer lab with brand new computers sponsored by DHCD. We have a day room staff member who runs a day room all day. We have 3 meals a day, Monday through Friday. We have 2 meals on Saturday and 2 meals on Sunday. And so we offer a lot of services for the clients to utilize during the day. And we feel that that's really important because we want everyone to try to keep moving forward and receive the case management and all the services and programs that they need to be successful. That's our goal. When they leave, we don't want them to have to return. One of the other myths is that our services cost. Everything is free to the clients. That is not the case at Valley Mission. So yeah, I could say a lot more, but Lydia has a great presentation, so I'm going to turn it over to her. And I know Leslie said we might have entertained some questions at the end. So
Great, thanks.
You have a PowerPoint presentation.
Do you have it on a USB drive by chance? We don't have a way to hook up your
Let me
laptop.
send it to you later and I'll just do it,
Absolutely.
and then you
That'd
can
be
have
fine.
it.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I can do that. All right,
Okay.
so Valley Homeless Connection is a whole bunch of people. You might be surprised at the number of individuals who are member agencies of Valley Homeless Connections. I'm going to read them to you. I normally wouldn't do this. Augusta County Commonwealth Attorney's Office, Augusta Health, Blue Ridge Legal Services, CAPSAW, New Directions Center, Project Horizon, which is in Lexington, the Public Defender's Office, the Rockbridge Area Relief Association, Rockbridge CSB, the Staunton Salvation Army, the Shenandoah LGBTQ Center, the Salem VA Medical Center, Shenandoah Valley Social Services, Tappan Hope Supportive Services for Veteran Families, Valley CSB, Valley Mission, Valley Supportive Housing, and WARM. So a local planning group is a small area. We're kind of a small area, right? And we cover Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro, Lexington, Rockbridge, Highland, Buena Vista, and Bath. There are 12 local planning groups across the Commonwealth that all comprise the balance of state continuum of care. Reasons why we would want to be a local planning group and not our own COC is all HUD COC grants require a collaborative applicant. We're not big enough to have a collaborative applicant. Most, if not all, housing grants require proof of coordination with the local planning group or COC. And as part of the balance of state COC, we have access to a larger pro rata than if we were
our own COC based on HUD's districting, geographic lines, et cetera. So what that means is because there are 12 local planning groups across the state, there might be a local planning group in Southwestern Virginia or South Central Virginia that does not have any projects for which they want funding, while we have 3. Okay, so here is the first sentence of our bylaws. The purpose of the Valley Homeless Connection, a local planning group, part of the Virginia Balance of State Continuum of Care, is to assist in the coordination, development, and evaluation of services and housing for homeless and at risk of homelessness persons with housing needs through planning, education, and advocacy. It's a collaborative and inclusive community-based organization for planning and managing homeless assistance resources and services effectively and efficiently to end homelessness in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. So it's important to know what our definition of homelessness is. This is prescribed by HUD. A person's primary nighttime residence is a place not meant for human habitation, or an emergency shelter, or a motel paid for by a charitable organization. The ideal flow through our crisis response system is this. First, that a household would have contact with a coordinated entry access point. Then the household is matched with an open shelter bed. Then, depending on criteria, the household is placed on a by name list and permanent housing program begins their service. The permanent housing program facilitates housing location and landlord engagement. Then a lease is executed and the household exits homelessness to permanent housing. And then the household does not return to homelessness. We are all trying to work ourselves out of a job. So let's break each of those points or each of those steps down. Coordinated entry access points. There are several. First, you can call the housing crisis line at 540-213-7347, leave a message and get a call back almost immediately. But outside of normal business hours, you got to call the Valley Mission directly. You can complete the universal intake online. That is posted on the Valley CSB homepage. It might also be posted on the WARM homepage. Is it on y'all's yet? Not yet. The coordinated entry specialist will then call to speak with the client who completed that form, or the client for whom that form was completed, because anybody can access it. The last way is to engage with street outreach staff. And so that's a dedicated staff person who goes out to where individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness might be and establishes rapport and encourages them to take advantage of the resources that we have to offer. The universal intake collects all of the required data elements. All of this information is put into our homeless management information system, HMIS. And projects that participate in HMIS are able to track households from their entry point all the way to their exit to permanent housing, or their exit to another system that makes it so that they're no longer literally homeless. We follow these households all the way from entry to exit, regardless of whether or not they accept shelter beds, whether or not they engage with street outreach staff, whether or not they were successful in locating permanent housing. Current participants in HMIS right now are the Shenandoah LGBTQ Center, Valley Mission, and Valley CSB. Our domestic violence providers have to use an alternative but comparable system because of the Violence Against Women Act. So the next step would be that the household would be matched with an available shelter bed. Depending on availability, the household might be placed on the emergency shelter waiting list. Valley Mission then determines their eligibility for admission. The coordinated entry specialist calls to offer the bed when available. This looks like daily text in a group every morning between 7:30 and 8 with the coordinated entry specialist and Valley Mission staff. Every single morning. And the question is, did anybody check in? How many beds can I offer? we've been able to nearly eliminate the waiting list. I don't think that there is a waiting list at this time. If an individual is not interested in going to the Valley Mission, or they have a circumstance that makes it so that they cannot access that resource, they're provided with information on how to access the warm, cold weather shelter, or they might be linked to New Directions Center based on their situation, or they might be linked to Salvation Army Motel Shelter. Now that is very limited availability, and it requires an inability to access existing shelter options. Once we have we have the household's information in HMIS, they're added to a by name list. Fun fact, it's a list of people experiencing homelessness in our community by name. We're not really looking at numbers. We are looking at people who have names and unique situations. This list is comprised of the information in HMIS, again, regardless of if they have accepted any services. The prioritization of this list allows very limited resources to be provided to the very most vulnerable individuals in our community. So here's the prioritization for permanent housing services. First, individuals who meet criteria for chronic homelessness. This is defined as a person with a disability and 12 cumulative months of homelessness in at least 4 separate episodes over the last 3 years, or 1 continuous episode. Veterans, that requires the DD-214. If someone has served in the National Guard, it requires a call up to active duty. Youth, ages 18 to 24, that are not accompanied in their homelessness by their parent or guardian. And individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness, where their primary nighttime residence is a place not meant for human habitation. The next step in the ideal flow is the permanent housing program facilitates the housing search and engages landlords. Permanent housing program responsibilities and activities include finding housing, assisting households with completing applications, advocating for households with landlords and property managers, completing housing quality standards inspections prior to leasing and move-in, educating households about their rights and responsibilities as tenants, reviewing leases to ensure compliance with the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, ensuring rent and utility allowance totals do not exceed HUD established fair market rents, ensuring rent is reasonable compared to similar units, and linking households to mainstream resources that can promote their housing stability. So in our community, we have 2 types of permanent housing programs. One is rapid rehousing, and the other is permanent supportive housing. In rapid rehousing, the only eligibility criteria is that someone is experiencing literal homelessness based on that definition back at the beginning. That is short-term rental assistance with a focus on linkage to mainstream resources. The other type, permanent supportive housing, the acronym is PSH, that requires someone meet the criteria for chronic homelessness, and it's long-term rental assistance with a focus on wraparound supportive services. Now, let's talk about money. This is the money that we have in this community. We have 3 main funders: Department of Housing and Community Development, which is DHCD, HUD, and the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, DBHDS. DHCD awards the Virginia Homeless Solutions Program. This is a community-wide application. It is a 2-year funding cycle. Right now, we're in the middle of the 2-year funding cycle, and so we'll have a renewal due in May or June with a July 1 start. Current grantees for this project, or for this fund source, are Project Horizon, Valley Mission, Valley CSB. Those funds originate from HUD. They come through the Commonwealth, so we have to follow HUD rules. We also have funds from the Governor's Housing Trust Fund. We are currently awaiting an award announcement for our 3rd year. These funds run on a calendar year, and so It is March the 9th, and we are waiting for calendar year 23 award announcement. That project is rapid rehousing for unaccompanied youth ages 18 to 24 with a prioritization for LGBTQ youth. Valley CSB is the primary grantee and the Shenandoah LGBTQ Center is a sub-grantee. We also have CHIRP. One of the things about housing, every industry has all of their acronyms, right? Housing's got a lot. CHIRP stands for COVID Homeless Emergency Response Program. This is CARES money. This money expires June 30th, 23. It was supposed to entirely expire in September of 22, and we got an extension for homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. So June 30th, 23, it's over. That was a lot of money. These are the funds that we used to support non-congregate shelter. We were able to expand when Mission wasn't able to be at full capacity because of social distancing. And we have been able to house permanently over 100 households in the last 3 years. HUD money. So their individual projects apply to the balance of state CFC. And we have one grantee in the Valley Homeless Connection, that is Valley CSB, with 2 projects. One is rapid rehousing, prioritizing families. The other is permanent supportive housing for individuals meeting criteria for chronic homelessness. And super exciting, New Directions applied for a rapid rehousing project. And so we're waiting for those award announcements as well. Lastly, we have the funds from DBHDS. This is permanent supportive housing for individuals with serious mental illness. We currently have 60 slots. Those funds are awarded by slot and not by fund total. DBHDS PSH has 5 priorities. Number 1 are state psychiatric facility discharges with no other supports and who require the supports offered by PSH. Number 2 is individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. Number 3 is individuals who are experiencing homelessness, not yet necessarily yet chronic because of the length of time that they've been homeless. 4 are individuals residing in assisted living facilities that could be more independent with PSH. And 5 are individuals who are frequent utilizers of the criminal justice system and or emergency departments. We have a pending expansion request for an additional 60 slots of this program with 30 reserved for frequent utilizers of the criminal justice system. Super excited about that. That's all I got. That's all the money that we have. Y'all have any questions?
Do you have any plans of that COVID money? Are you going to be able to use it all up before the end, or?
Yeah, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the last quarter or so, staff know that it's expiring. We have about $200,000 left.
Okay.
And it's probably less than that because I'm behind on the remittances by 2 months. So I think it's going to be budgeted out pretty closely.
Did it help to make some lasting improvements for your situation, or was it entirely like need-based in the moment?
What do you mean?
Well, it was a COVID response situation for housing for that. Were you folks able to take care of some projects that you wanted to, that you couldn't have before that money?
No.
No.
So we don't develop. We're not developers.
Okay.
We are service providers. Valley Homeless Connection is a group of service providers. And one of the things that I have said for the last couple of years, is that it has been remarkably frustrating to have so much money for rental assistance and not be able to find units that met the requirements.
Question. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So could you just take me through the process again for a person that is experienced in homelessness and they're unsheltered. First thing I heard, would it be that they would be offered a shelter like Valley Mission or somewhere else first?
That is correct.
Okay. So is that the first step?
That would be the ideal flow, right? Through the way that folks are engaging with the system. What can happen is that the street outreach staff engages with an individual who is experiencing unsheltered homelessness and says, hey, there's a shelter bed, do you want to go? And they're like, not tonight. And so then the next day and the next week and continuing to build that relationship. And then when they are ready to access shelter, then they would be connected to whatever shelter option there is available, whether it's going to be the Valley Mission or Warm, et cetera.
So how does a person, I heard, but I wasn't clear on it. How does a person get into the rapid homeless shelter? I mean, the rapid
Rehousing program.
housing, yeah.
Yes. So all of the permanent housing programs that we have, rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, those are the two main types. So we have several different fund sources of those programs. It depends on those prioritizations. So the number one prioritization is folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness. So we're looking at folks who have a disability and have documented homelessness, literal homelessness of 12 months, right? So then we have these by name lists for these 4 prioritizations. They're organized by when they entered the system. So whoever has been experiencing homelessness the longest gets served the first.
So how about anybody that's coming out of the justice system, reentry into our community? Would they be able to go into something like the rapid permanent housing?
We are expecting that when we get the expansion for the additional 60 slots, that individuals who are coming out of criminal justice system with serious mental illness will be prioritized for those 30 slots. We have to establish a local prioritization for those 30 slots.
So do you all do a evaluation for somebody that's experiencing mental health crisis?
Yes.
When they come out?
Yes, in the jail right now in Middle River, there is a forensic discharge planning program that is funded by the Department of Behavioral Health as well. And so their job is to make sure that individuals with serious mental illness exiting the jail are linked to the resources that they need in the community. We work extremely well with them. They have a housing specialist that sits in the housing specialist team or in the housing team and is part of the Valley Homeless Connection and case conferencing. So I don't see that there's going to be an issue, but that's why we applied for this expansion.
And is there a wait list for that?
We don't even know for sure that we've got it yet.
Okay.
Hey, you mentioned earlier about the hotel stays that the Salvation Army authorizes. I serve on that board, and I know in the month of January, we had significant people staying in the hotel. What are the criteria that would differentiate somebody that was accepted into the your facility versus going into a hotel? And I understand the Salvation Army limits the number of nights you can stay in the hotel.
Yeah, so they're doing 3 months, I believe.
Yeah, up to.
So situations where coordinated entry has referred folks to that program versus the Valley Mission is somebody who could not get upstairs. So
Okay.
it is not intended to be another option. It is intended to serve folks who are in need of shelter, but are unable to access the Valley Mission or Warm.
Okay.
Quick question. So when you have someone reach out to person that's, on the list and needs, the mission, for instance, and they say, just like you said, they're contacted and they say, there's a bed, and the person says, I'm not interested tonight. That contact that continues the next day too, right? I mean, like, or is that the end of the contact?
It depends on specifically what happens. So let's say that the street outreach worker is the person contacting the individual who needs the shelter. That relationship continues. If the individual is saying, I need shelter, and then we call and offer shelter and they say, no, thanks, they're still in the system, but we're not reaching back out.
So you're going to move down your list. to the
Absolutely.
next- Gotcha.
I do have one more question. So you told me, you said that a person coming out of incarceration is mental health. So what if a person that is coming out doesn't have any mental health issues?
Then they would still go through the process, but they would not be on one of the prioritizations.
So they will go through the process of putting their name on a list. And is there a wait list for that?
For rapid rehousing, absolutely. 200 deep.
Okay. Yeah.
How many of these people are working and, already have jobs, but just either get priced out of the market or have some event come up that they can't make the rents and stuff like that?
We would have to run a report for that, but that doesn't feel like the most typical story.
I'll respond briefly to that. So we have, let's see, about 70 adults. And I'd say out of those 70 adults at Valley Mission, I'd say probably 30 of them are employed full-time. A lot of the folks are on disability or are unemployable for another reason. But that's a great question.
I just know I've had a few work for me that end up there because they can't, their car breaks down and they don't have the money and then they can't pay the rent. So.
Councilor Roberts.
Just one question. I'm glad I got Captain Brown here too, because I want to approach it from a different angle. Like, for instance, coming home from work this afternoon, there was a young man spread out on the steps of the church where I attend. But when police come upon somebody that, somebody calls, a pastor calls or somebody else calls and they, which has happened at my church before, they're down in, it's kind of like a little alley or a goalway, whatever. And what do the police do if they contact this person, it's cold, whatever, do they immediately contact the mission? Do they contact you? What is that process, if you don't mind? Maybe Brian can come up and then y'all can help us too.
So if it's business hours, I would recommend calling the Valley Homeless Helpline, which would be then coordinated entry, and they would get a call back and then they would be connected with the mission. If it's after business hours, call the mission.
Right. And we do emergency stays at Valley Mission. And then the next business day, we coordinate with Lydia and get everybody on the list is very important so that we don't jump over other people.
So Ryan, if one of your officers comes upon a homeless person or comes upon somebody in a church or in between a building or something, you get a call from a pastor and say, hey, I've got somebody here. Can you come check it out? What would be your step? And what would be the step that the police officer would take?
So they would first reach probably out to the mission because that is our most accessible outreach for us to do. So they would probably reach to them first and see if they're eligible for that emergency placement that evening. During the colder months, the warm shelter is an option. We would try to figure out how to get them to those, and we have all those numbers in that placement would be the initial thing. I think most of the time for us, a lot of times those people don't want those services at that moment in time. So we're trying to find other outlets for them.
I have just one other quick
Last question. Go ahead.
If you all had, magic wand, what would you want us to do from, the city of Staunton standpoint? What could we do to help your job, the job that you're doing for the folks that need this?
Affordable housing is number one, for folks who are on a fixed income with disability or even those who are working, it's nearly impossible for them to afford the housing right now. So
that's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. We've run past it, but I think, Ms.
you all.
Beauregard, we're going to have to ask you to request these ladies to come back.
Yeah, we need
again.
more time.
We really enjoyed listening to all the programs and we thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
And I look forward to hearing from you again in the future. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to need somebody to give us a motion so we can go into a closed meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to enter a closed meeting for one, consultation with legal counsel for necessary legal related advice and discussion regarding the order to show cause concerning the Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court facility located in the District Court's building at 6 East Johnson Street, Staunton, pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7 and 2.2-3711A8, and 2, discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property located on Beverly, Johnson, and Frederick Streets, Morris Mill Road, Thorn Ruse Avenue, and North Frontier Drive in the city of Staunton, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3.
I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second, it's Terry Holmes.
Terry Holmes, thank you very much. Mr. Kester, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We're in closed meeting. All right, it's 7:30 and I call the regular meeting to order. If everyone would please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Mr. Mayor, we
Oh,
need
you
to
got
close this meeting.
Sorry.
I tried it.
That's right. Very good. Counselor Woods, would you lead us down?
I make a motion to come out of closed session.
I'll second.
So we have to certify.
Will that satisfy?
We do need the certification.
Got it.
I got it.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Mayor Claffey, I move that council reconvene in an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawful exempt public business matters were discussed and only public business matters as identified in the closed meeting motion were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion. Mr. Kester.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now, can we stand for the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight's invocation moment of silence will be brought to us by Counselor Holmes.
Well, I just would like to think with all the things that are going on in the world today, that we're lucky to live in a nice community like Staunton, where, you know, everybody gets along and it's friendly and safe. And a lot of people don't have that. When you hear about all the bombing and stuff that goes on in Ukraine or just crazy stuff around the world. We're just so lucky and blessed to live here in Staunton. And I don't know that that's a prayer, but it's definitely a great thought. And I would just like for that to be my invocation.
Amen.
Well said. Thank you very much. All right. Brings us to the mayor's report. On Tuesday afternoon, I was in receipt of a letter from the governor's office, and it says, Mayor Claffey, it is my pleasure to inform you that your fiscal year 23 IRF planning grant application for the Western State Hospital steam plant project has been approved by Governor Youngkin. Please review the attached letter. Let us know if you have any questions. We got a grant for $99,000 to proceed with that. Now, that's the state version of what a Brownsville grant is from the federal version. So, for instance, what we have out there in the West End. But this is a $99,000 grant to help with the figuring out what we can do with that facility to turn it from a non-producing facility into something that's going to possibly generate some tax revenue. So it's a great win for Staunton. We're very pleased. I want to thank Billy Vaughn and his staff for all the work they did for filing that grant. Good job. That's all I have. Do we have other additional members by members of council?
Go ahead.
Ms. Beauregard, did you? I should not
You waited
have
until she
asked
was
that
eating.
question.
Trying to eat a cookie.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that 29th. Did you ever, in the building, is that a possibility?
I haven't checked that yet. I'm sorry.
Okay,
But I will.
all right.
I put that on hold for right now.
I'll put it on hold for just a little bit.
Should I make an announcement about Women's History now or
Please,
wait till?
please.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many people here tonight. I just wanted to recognize that it is Women's History Month, the month of March. It has been around since 1981 when it was Women's History Week. In 1987, it was designated by Congress to be extended to the entire month. And we have seen lots of advancements by women in politics, in the economy, in education, in science, and in all areas. And I just want to recognize that we have women in top positions here in our local government. You can see our assistant city manager, our city manager, our vice mayor, and Councilor Woods and I representing on city council. We have many female directors of our departments here in Staunton. And I think that we are very blessed to have such talented women in our community. I also want to just point out that that I want to recognize the women who choose to stay home and raise families and run the home, because I think that you and we are recognized as the heart of the home. But I also want to say that Staunton is recognizing Women's History Month. This Saturday, there is a Queen City, what is it called? Queen City Day, Queen City Women's Day this Saturday. So please head downtown at noon. Businesses will be open. There will be folks with art. There will be storytellers. There will be performers, and people will be celebrating the different entrepreneurs. We have many women entrepreneurs downtown. Artists and community leaders will also be recognized. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Indeed, we do have very talented women in the city of Staunton. Who's next?
I just wanted to add something that Michelle said about the businesses, but also women that run nonprofit organizations
Mhm.
also will be highlighted Saturday as well.
Thank you. Anything else? Next order is the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mayor Claffey. I move to approve the work session and regular meeting agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Uh,
Mr.
Need a date?
Minutes.
Minutes. Okay. And regular minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Kesker.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Yes.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. And that brings us on finally onto our regular meeting. And first order of business is staff recognition for Barbara Bell. Ms. Beauregard.
Mayor, I have some, well, we have 3 staff recognitions tonight, and can I bring this over to you so you can read?
Please. Yes. First off, could we have Miss Barbara S. Bell step forward, please? Yeah.
Yay.
All right. City of Staunton presents this certificate of appreciation to Barbara S. Bell in appreciation for her contributions to the betterment of the city of Staunton. The city hereby awards this honor for over 25 years of outstanding service to the leaders, employees, and citizens of the city of Staunton. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you for your
Thank you.
service.
We have Kevin K. Klein.
And
And this states, certificate of appreciation to Kevin K. Klein in appreciation of your contributions to the betterment of the city of Staunton. The city hereby awards this honor for over 22 years of outstanding fire and rescue service to the leaders, employees, and citizens of the city of Staunton. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you so much for your service. Congratulations.
Third one is for Carol Cookman.
Oh.
Carol. Congratulations. And this one says, in appreciation to your contributions to the betterment of the city of Staunton, the city hereby awards this honor for over 12 years of outstanding service to the leaders, employees, and citizens of the city of Staunton. Thank you.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I want to give all 3 an opportunity.
I guess I wanted to say thank you for the chance that I got to work for Staunton. I moved here from Alaska. I was a military wife and applied for a job here at Staunton. Didn't get the first one, applied for the second one and got it. And so I've been kind of taking care of the guys at Public Works for the last 12 years and working with Jeff. And I miss my Public Works family. I miss all of you, but I really miss my guys at Public Works.
Oh.
And I wouldn't have changed any of it for the world. Thank you.
Amen.
Go let Cindy talk.
That's it. Go, Cindy.
I'm Cindy, you all know me.
Mhm.
I worked with Barbara for almost 23 years. When I started back in 2000, she had just transferred up to finance from the commissioner's office, where she'd been for a few years. And as the certificate said, she was here for almost 25, but she was down in Virginia Beach and Richmond, I think, for 15 before that. So she's worked in local government for a long time. And Barbara was everybody's favorite person every other Friday for payroll.
Mhm.
And, you know, she's just somebody that over 20 years, she was my go-to person and a good friend. And she left a big hole in the finance department. That's really hard to
And
fill.
Cindy was not just my boss. She was one of my
Yeah.
friends. She
Yeah,
was,
so
I never considered her my boss.
we miss her,
Yeah.
but she's great and we're happy for her and just a little jealous that she got to retire.
After 40 years of being with BRS, I was ready to spend time with my grandbaby. So
Oh,
yes,
congratulations.
I enjoy it. And I definitely miss the people in finance, Jesse and Cindy and Chad. I definitely miss the people here. The city was great to work for 25 years. I've enjoyed it, but it was time to leave.
Enjoy the grandbabies.
Yeah,
Thank
enjoy.
you.
I can't let Kevin go away tonight without
Yeah.
having, he's not going to talk. I can guarantee you that. No, I can tell you one thing about Kevin. He was the go-to person when it came to mechanical work. He kept our apparatus fleet up and running, repairs. He worked overtime. He worked till late at night, many nights, working on equipment to keep it running. So for that, he is just him personally doing that while working has saved the city a lot of money for repairs that we would normally send out somewhere. But for that, I'd like to thank Kevin for his 22 years of service and appreciate everything he's done for us. And not just as a worker, but as a friend and everything. So,
Wow.
thank you.
Thank you. All of them. Awesome.
Yes. Can we get a picture of all three of the retirees with the council members?
Yeah, don't want to waste it. Looking at. All right, there we go. Alice, no, you're good. Just want to make sure.
Amen. Yes, yeah. Great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
They were like it. So fun.
Wow.
All right. Brings us to the public hearing and consideration of an amendment to Staunton City Code, Section 18.120.10-4 of Title 18 zoning to allow an undeveloped and unaccepted street to serve as primary access to a single-family dwelling. Ms. Beauregard.
Rodney Rose, our senior planner, will walk through this item this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Claffey, City Council members. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening for this item and for the next two. This is a proposed amendment to the requirement that every single family dwelling have 30 feet of street frontage on a developed and accepted public street. Mr. Charlie Bishop has requested that the city consider an amendment to allow a limited amount of developed on these undeveloped, basically paper streets. As I'm sure at least 4 of the council members will remember, back in 2021, there was an amendment to allow landlocked parcels to be developed with one single family dwelling if they were able to get a 10-foot easement to a public street, a developed street. This is a very similar amendment, but it would be for these paper streets. These are not landlocked technically because they front on a platted street, but it has not been developed and it has not been accepted by the city. And a lot of these circumstances, it'd be cost prohibitive to try to build a city street and then maybe put a house or two on it. And a lot of times these paper streets, they really are not adequate to build a street to current city standards. So the amendment for you tonight is to allow one house to be developed off these paper streets. So, and all of the lots on this paper street would have to be under single ownership and would have to be combined. We have looked into this and it looks like there's actually about 45 of these paper streets or parts of paper streets that could benefit from this. So you're looking at the potential of 45 additional single-family dwellings. I would note that this proposed amendment aligns with the objective of the City of Staunton Comprehensive Plan and encouraging projects that infill existing neighborhoods. And the Plan Commission's meeting on February 16th, 2023, the commission conducted a public hearing. No one spoke in opposition to the request. And on a 4-0 vote, the commission voted to recommend approval of the amendment. Mr. Charlie Bishop contacted the office today and said, unfortunately, he would not be able to attend tonight's meeting. His grandson was playing in a ball game.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask one quick question?
Yes, yes. Councilor Robertson.
Just in the reading up to this, I just want to ask the question, and I think it involved planning as well, or it said staff. It said y'all supported it, but there was some concerns about potential loopholes. Can you maybe further address those potential loopholes? And then the rewording, I'm assuming, has addressed or confronted those loopholes so that they may not happen. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Our initial, when we're met with Mr. Bishop, we thought, okay, we agreed to this concept, but we need to get the wording right to prevent some unforeseen circumstances such as multiple houses being developed on a unimproved street, an inadequate street. Also, you say there's a paper street with 4 lots on it, 4 lot owners. We didn't want something where it's first come, first serve, so that just the first person that applied for a house could get this benefit. So we had language in there that they all have to be under the same ownership and combine into one lot. So that's just some of our concerns, but we have worked on this. Went to the Plan Commission on 2 different occasions and we received some very helpful feedback and made some additional changes to it. The city attorney has reviewed this and we think that what we have before you tonight addresses those initial concerns.
Okay. Thank you.
Rodney, as a follow-up to that, I went out there and looked at the property there off of G Street. It was interesting finding G Street. But so you think there's the ability to put 4 different lots on there? I mean, 4 different houses back there on that lot, the undeveloped lot?
No, sir. Under this amendment and under Mr. Bishop's request and what he would like to do is combine, I believe there's 3 lots back there. And he would like to combine those 3 lots into one and develop one house.
It would only be one.
Just like the amendment we did for the landlocked parcels. Yes, sir.
Rodney, and you're saying if they build more than one house, each one of them have to be owned by different people or by the same person? I was a little confusing.
They could only build one house total on the entire paper street, and it would have to be under, all of the lots have to be under sole ownership. So then it's not one of these who gets this benefit.
Right.
I mean.
Okay, any other further questions from members of council? Well, in that case, I would entertain a motion.
This is a proposed amendment, so it's a public hearing.
So we have a public hearing. All right. In a moment, I'll open up a public hearing. It is a time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a specific topic. We ask that you please give your name, your address, and then keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. When you reach the 5-minute limit, I will let you know that your time limit has expired. For our Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak on this particular public hearing. If you raise your hand during this public hearing, you will be able to speak for the 5 minutes as well. Once everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, I will then close the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium. We will alternate between the individuals physically present and those who have their hands raised on the Zoom platform. The public hearing is open.
Pull up my notes
Just
real
about
quick. This is only about this paper street. Oh.
It's okay.
You're fine. You're fine. It happens all the time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Wilson Fulber. I live at 318 Woodmont Drive in Staunton. I'm very pleased to see this proposal. Being a real estate broker and serving Staunton for 42 years in the real estate business, I've seen a number of instances where there's land that meets this criteria and it's just not buildable. And it just doesn't seem to make any sense that a house could not be built and that we could get, the city of Staunton could get the tax revenue from that rather than having a vacant parcel that brings in just a few dollars per year. I can give you one instance that just over a year ago in the Hillcrest subdivision where I represented General Theodore Shuey and his wife Elizabeth. And they owned 40 acres in the city of Staunton, fronting on Churchville Avenue. And his desire was to sell off the rear portion of his property as their years advance, that they didn't want to have the responsibility for all that property. The other rear, I should say the rear end of his property meets this criteria on Audubon, where there's a stub street. And there's a 100-foot strip of an undeveloped street. And we had someone that wanted to buy that land. And we came to the city, and to make a long story short, the answer was no. You cannot build a house. And the individual wanting to buy that piece of land wanted to build a very expensive house that would really add to the tax revenue for the city of Staunton. Anyway, to make a long story short, the deal that I put together, that person who bought that piece of land that's within 100 feet of that stub street has to come off of Hillcrest Drive and travel and put in a road approximately 1,300 feet long. And his house will be in sight distance of the stub street. So I'm definitely in favor of this. I can see how it will benefit a lot of people in the city of Staunton, not only the lot owners, but I've spoken to council before about the shortage of housing in the city of Staunton. Many of these streets, they're not necessarily in neighborhoods where there will be expensive houses, but they will be the affordable houses, which is greatly, greatly needed. So I'm very much in favor of this. I'm very happy to see this proposal. It will make a difference for a lot of people and provide housing for needy families.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Kester, anyone?
No, sir.
Anyone else from the audience wish to participate in the public hearing? All right, the public hearing is ended. Go ahead,
Mayor
sir.
Claffey.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification purposes, I'd like to add that this is for existing parcels only. It wouldn't be for new developments and new subdivisions.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Mayor Claffey. I move the council adopt the ordinance and approve the amendment as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Counselor Edwards seconds. Mr. Kesker.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to another public hearing. Oh, yeah. Public hearing and consideration of amendments to Staunton City Code, Section 18.125 of Title 18 zoning to provide an exemption for some single-family dwellings from the required parking and sealed surface requirements. Ms. Beauregard.
Rodney Rhodes will also walk through this item.
Welcome back.
Thank you. This city zoning code requires that every single family dwelling have one off-street parking space and it be of a sealed surface. The proposed amendment before you, I'm calling it the Billy Vaughn Amendment, since he's the one that asked staff to look into this. So he gets the credit, or if you don't like it, he gets the blame for this proposed amendment. In general, it's good zoning practice to require off-street parking space, so it doesn't clutter up the street, doesn't compete with other houses, properties for on-street parking. Also, it's generally a good idea to have it of a sealed surface so that it does not, you don't get gravel and stuff washing into the public area, into the public road and sidewalks. However, when you have some infill development within existing neighborhoods and the majority of the houses on a certain block either do not have off-street parking or do not have a sealed surface parking space, then maybe there should be an exception to that rule. So that's the amendment before you today. And I'll give a couple examples of how this would benefit in unique situations. If it's in a development, we've had one recently, and a house is being built that's of a modest house, and the houses in that neighborhood do not have a sealed, paved parking space. However, it was a requirement for this particular house to have that. And that's an additional cost, obviously, for the developer that's passed along to the homeowner, and maybe it's not appropriate in this particular case. It also doesn't keep with the same character of the neighborhood when you start requiring that. Same thing with a neighborhood that does not have off-street parking, and then you require a parking space. Sometimes it looks out of place. I can think of two houses that were built in the past few years. One of them was a house that burned down. And when they went to rebuild it, although it previously did not have off-street parking, it was required under current ordinance because more than 50% of the value of the house was gone. They had to meet current requirements and had to put in an off-street parking space, which they did. It looks very odd. And a lot of times you have some very small lots where the parking space takes up a lot of the front yard. And another case in that same neighborhood, it was an infill lot that had never been built on and had a very steep slope away from the street, which made it very difficult to get to the house for one. I think they had to build a elevated walkway to get to it, and very difficult to build a functional parking space that was off street. And none of those other houses in that particular area had off-street parking. So that's just a couple examples of how this can benefit development in certain circumstances. The Planning Commission reviewed this on 2 different occasions, added some additional suggested language. We also took this to the development review team, and they looked it over and made some suggested changes to come up with a standard. If you're not going to have a sealed surface parking space, well, it needs to have some sort of a standard to help eliminate the possibility of that being washed into the public street. So those changes have been made to the proposed amendment. And at the Planning Commission's, I would know that this would improve flexibility in older neighborhoods and redevelopment areas by, it's in compliance with the Staunton Comprehensive Plan and improving the flexibility in older neighborhoods and redevelopment areas by examining lot size, setback, and parking requirements. And at the Planning Commission's February 16th, 2023 meeting, the commission conducted a public hearing. No one spoke in opposition to the request, and on a 4-0 vote, they recommend approval of this amendment. I'd be glad to take any questions you have at this time or after you conduct the public hearing.
Counselors,
So-
do you have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do, because I'm not clearly understanding, is this that we're not requiring them to have off-street parking? Is this what this amendment is about? It's not the requirement, or it is the requirement?
It's not requiring it in these unique situations where 50% of the houses on that block do not have it now. So it wouldn't be for new development. You couldn't subdivide the property and have this benefit. It would just be for existing lots.
What form would that exemption take? Would that be within the planning department? Would that be before the planning commission? With that, I mean, it's often not quite cut and dry where the neighborhood begins and ends to determine 50%.
We note in the amendment that's in between intersecting streets. So that could be a very small block, it could be a very long block, but that's what we use in other parts of the zoning code to determine exceptions to rules and stuff.
For those that haven't seen the agenda, they have quite an elaborate list of the number of parking spaces that are required, and some of them are rather humorous. And I got particularly tickled at the swimming pool requirement. For every 30 square feet of water space you have to have a parking space. So I assume you can't park your car on the pool.
When you get into our parking requirements currently, just about every core neighborhood is completely out of compliance. And it becomes somewhat maddening to build something as infill here, because you say you need to have a driveway. And we say, would you like it on top of those rocks or under the house? I fully support this. This makes it more easy to do infill housing within the city in neighborhoods that, they had just blank lots for decades.
Any other questions of Rodney from council? All right, I'm going to open up the public hearing. It's time for council to set aside to hear from citizens. We ask you to please give your name, your address, keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. For our Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you want to speak on the parking public hearing. If you raise your hand, you will also be able to talk during the matters from the public at the end of the meeting. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, I will close the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium. Mr. Kesker.
No, sir.
I will now close the public hearing. That was painless.
I like that one.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor. I move that the council adopt the ordinance and approve the amendment as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Do I hear a second?
Mayor Claffey, I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Miss Edwards.
Aye.
Miss Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Oh, that's you?
All right. And now he brings us to consideration of a final plat for Villages at Staunton extension of Village Drive. Ms. Beauregard.
For the last time this evening, I'll introduce Rodney Rhodes.
All right, welcome back.
Thank you once again. It's still a pleasure to be here.
There you go.
Village Associates has submitted a final plat for an extension of Village Drive, as well as an extension of public water and sewer lines to provide access and service to a recently created lot and 2 apartment buildings. Both of these, each of these buildings has 20 units. This is about 240 feet of new road that would be accepted by the city. The city engineer has looked over this and has determined that all of the, it is in accordance, all the infrastructure is ready for acceptance by the city. The final plat is in general conformance with approved master plan, the subdivision ordinance, and the zoning ordinance. Plan Commission conducted a meeting at their meeting on November 17th, 2022. On a 5-0 vote, the commission recommended approval of the final plat with the condition that any outstanding items be addressed prior to it coming to city council. I would note that those minor issues have been addressed. One of them was just waiting on lights from Dominion for street lights. So those issues have been addressed, and we're recommending that council accept this extension and approval of the plat for Village Drive. I'd be glad to take any questions you have. This is not a public hearing. And I would note that Daniel Hansen, the surveyor, is here in attendance if you have any technical questions about the plat.
Members of council, do you have any questions?
I do. Well, what size apartments would these be? Would they be like 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, or a mixture of all?
These apartments, the first building is completed, and COs have been issued for that building. There's 20 units in it. My understanding, they are completely full at this time. There's a mixture of sizes. I looked at the floor plan of this, and I could not tell you the square footage of the units. Building number 2 is waiting on this approval so that we can start issuing COs for that building, and they can start renting out those 20 units. Everything has been completed though.
Do we have any idea what the price range is, or just?
No, for this purpose, it's whether or not it meets the ordinance and the requirements. So
I'm just curious, I'm sorry.
Further questions from council?
Mayor Claffey, I move that council approve the final plat as recommended by the planning commission.
Also,
Motion has been made. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second.
Mr. Kester?
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Miss Edwards.
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Good job there.
Well,
All
there's
right.
20 spots.
Thank you, Rodney. Oh, somebody different, Mr. Vin. Next, that comes up in consideration of fiscal year 2024 holiday schedule. Ms. Beauregard.
It is somebody new. It's John Vin, our
Yes,
Chief
good
Human
evening, Mayor
Resources
Claffey
Officer.
and members of the City Council. This evening, we are requesting the City Council approve the presented FY24 holiday schedule, which includes 13 paid holidays per policy, plus one additional holiday, which would be Friday, December 23rd, 2023. The holiday schedule is planned in advance to allow employees and departments time to plan and coordinate operations. And as a frame of reference for you all, City Council approved the current FY23 holiday schedule with a total of 14 days. Finally, I'd like to bring to your attention at the bottom of the actual holiday schedule, there is an error there, and it should read, must be on payroll July 1, 2023 to receive a personal holiday, not to be on payroll July 1, 2024. So that will be corrected. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Members of council, do you have any questions about the holiday schedule? Ours is corrected. It says 2020.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, we put a new version in front of you.
We're good.
Oh, you're-
Okay,
yeah.
all good.
We're good.
And with your approval, we'll get this out tomorrow to employees.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the holiday schedule as printed.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Carry on second. Very good. All right, Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, and that brings us to H, consideration of a resolution approving the city's participation in the proposed settlement of opioid-related claims. Ms. Beauregard.
I'll turn this over to Mr. Blair, but let me just start by saying that this is a procedural item tonight that he will walk through shortly. Our next steps after this will be to meet with the other two localities, Waynesboro and Augusta County, and determine whether we want to apply for a multi-jurisdictional planning grant. If successful with this grant, we can hire a consultant to assist us with putting a plan together for allocating and managing the settlement funds. And we will return to council as we move forward with these discussions, and there will be additional decision points associated with funding in the future. So I'll stop there and let Mr. Blair explain what the item is this evening that we're asking you to approve.
Councilor Roberts.
Yeah, I will make a statement. As much as I agree with this, almost 40 years of practice as a pharmacist in dealing with this, I don't think it would be just a conflict of interest, that I would vote with it. So I will be abstaining from this. Okay.
Very well. Very well.
It's an appearance. It's right.
Just
It's
an
not
appearance,
an
right.
official conflict. Yeah. Well, good evening, Mayor Claffey, members of council. In November of 2021, there was an item before the city council concerning opioid manufacturers and a distributor. And at that time, the council voted to join in a nationwide settlement that was a result of litigation brought by the Virginia Attorney General. And at that time, the council voted to join that settlement. And before you tonight, there's an additional settlement that is being proposed that is a result of that Attorney General's litigation that has been brought against many components of the opioid distribution supply chain. CVS, Walgreens, Teva, Allergan, and Walmart have agreed to effectively an $18.7 billion nationwide settlement. Virginia's share, depending on how many localities approve, would be approximately $425 million. Before you tonight is the item that the resolution that would allow the city to join the settlement as part of the Virginia Attorney General's litigation. It's also worth noting that November 2021 settlement that the council agreed to had a distribution formula, which is based on population as well as factors related to opioid use in respective localities. The settlement, and before you tonight, the resolution which would join that settlement would use the same formula based on population and those factors. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Councilors, questions?
My only question is, what would be the drawback of us participating in this? I can see the benefit certainly, but are there any drawbacks to that?
Sure. Well, the drawbacks are this is a nationwide global settlement. If you agree to it, you cannot individually as a city bring claims against any of these entities as the city of Staunton. You would be joining and signing on to this settlement.
And this money would be used to help rehabilitate or
It can be
Right.
used for, it can be used for a variety of types of programs, and that's what we're actually exploring right now. So for instance, the Community Services Board has approached us, the Pathways Program in Augusta County has approached us. So there's a lot of educational programs. I know the Office on Youth has some school programs. So there's a lot of opportunities. And that's the next step in this, is to work through that. A regional approach would be best. It would get additional funds for the city and the region. So again, those are some of the decision points that we'll look for you all to make in the future as we figure out how to start allocating these funds out.
Further questions?
Sounds like the most safe route.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the pockets to go
No.
and sue them ourselves. So I will entertain a motion if someone would like to.
Mayor Claffey. I move that Staunton City Council approve the resolution approving the city's participation and proposed settlement of opioid-related claims against Teva, Allegra, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, and their related corporate entities.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sir Edwards seconds. Mr. Kesker.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Abstain.
Mr. Holmes,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. All right.
Guess
All right.
it's settled.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Uh,
Oh,
So bad.
brings us to matters from the city manager, Ms. Beauregard.
I have several items tonight, so I'll just apologize in advance, but they're all pretty important. I'll start by reporting some really good news. The city received official word from the Virginia Department of Transportation that the pedestrian crossing improvements project submitted as part of the FY24 Highway Safety Improvement Program was approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Pedestrian improvements will be made to 10 intersections at a cost of over $1.1 million. This is a straight grant, no local match, and VDOT will administer the contract. As these improvements are part of FY24 program, the design can begin this July and go directly to construction following that. And construction is expected to be completed by the end of 2024. The intersections are Beverly at Coulter, Market, New, Augusta, Central, Lewis, and Hayes, Johnson at Augusta and New, and Statler at Coulter. Thanks to David Stokes, Traffic Superintendent, and Jeff Johnston, Public Works Director, for their hard work with VDOT on securing this funding for these very important improvements to our pedestrian infrastructure. So that's very exciting. We like free money.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
Very good.
Wow.
Love free money.
And David.
The next item I'd like to address is the issues that have occurred at the animal shelter the past week. And I asked for some information from the shelter director about the most recent situation involving the euthanasia of 4 surrendered dogs. And let me start by saying that the owners, along with the shelter director and staff, continue to work towards making positive changes and improvements to the shelter and all of the programs and the services administered by the shelter. And I will readily admit there is a lot of work yet to be done. And I was just thinking the other day that as soon as I became acting or interim, this was a situation I was immediately intimately part of. So we're working really hard to make the shelter the best it can be. And I appreciate hearing concerns and comments about the shelter. And I know this entire community, and I know there's a lot of people in here that support the shelter, want to have a shelter that supports and serves the community in the best way possible. But let me just say a few words about what was reported to me from the shelter director, John Hilbert. That last Friday morning, his first priority was to meet with everyone in the dog program about the decision to be made regarding the dogs in question. And during those meetings, some of the staff informed him that they were not comfortable working with many of these dogs, and several staff members had been bitten on several occasions. Some bites punctured the skin, destroyed their clothing, etc. And staff told John that they did not want to handle 3 of the dogs in question and would not let them out of their kennels. 2 of the dogs, as reported to me again, 2 of the dogs that were euthanized had bite histories prior to coming to the shelter and had bitten shelter staff, including the director. Another dog that was euthanized had also bitten staff while at the shelter. The 4th dog that was euthanized was another owner surrender, and as I understand, and I also acknowledge though that this situation in particular has been the most controversial and caused what seems to be the most concern. So I'm hesitant to try to offer a dissection of what happened exactly, but let me just say that, again, all 3 owners are working hard to improve the shelter and its operations, procedures, and policies, and we will continue and are committed to doing so and helping the shelter director and staff do the best job they can do and serve the community in the best way possible. So let me address a separate question that came up that was about how do we make it easier for animal owners to pay fines to retrieve their animals. And at this time, staff is working on having a card reader and the IT infrastructure to support that at the current shelter. But because fines are different for each locality, that's a bit more complicated, and we would need to work through that process to ensure each locality is reimbursed appropriately. Staff would charge the appropriate fee and any other financial considerations. But again, we're committed to try to make things as easy as possible for those who utilize the shelter. And finally, just let me say a few words about the new shelter at Verona Elementary. This has some questions arose about this project. And just to remind everybody the history, the original shelter was opened in 2011 and an expansion occurred in 2015. And in spring of 2022, the three owners agreed to complete a feasibility study. The new shelter will provide 39,000 square feet. The current space is 5,000. It will provide needed staff and program area space. It'll be a more convenient location. It's in Verona versus Lyndhurst. And Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro are investing $2.9 million for this facility. And in the case of City of Staunton, we're using ARPA funds. We could not have done this without ARPA money. So as far as the tentative schedule, the feasibility study is complete. The design is occurring now and will be complete by the end of the year. And that includes researching shelter standards and guidelines, touring other shelter facilities for lessons learned and design must. And renovation should occur in calendar year 2024. Now, as far as the capacity of the new shelter, it will accept the existing capacity of the existing shelter, but expansion can be planned in the future, and there is room at the new shelter for an expansion if that is needed in the funding. We don't have the funding set aside for expansion right now, and if it is decided that expansion is necessary. And at least for this phase, the focus needs to be on moving animals in and out and establishing those practices in the most efficient way possible. And again, we can look at expansion in the near future if that's necessary. Switching topics, let me just talk about a road closure. It's going to be fairly significant, so I wanted to bring this up. Between 7:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. starting on Monday, March 13th through Friday the 17th, West Beverly Street between Bellevue and Beverly Court will be closed. Detours will be in place, and this is because of work being done by Columbia Gas on their gas lines, and basically this is necessitating the road closure. There will be electronic message boards posted along West Beverly, also informing motorists of the detours. And we're also going to be posting information on this on social media first thing tomorrow, so please share that when you see it. On March 25th from 4 to 6, Co-Art will officially celebrate 25 years of presenting high quality art and artists to the community. So please stop by to celebrate with them. Everybody is invited. A new PBS series, Life in the Heartland, dives into the heart of America to meet the neighbors, communities, and organizations that are creating unique solutions to rural America's toughest challenges. The episode on plastic recycling airs on March 23rd. And the real narrative is about pot plastic, but Jeff Johnston, our Public Works Director, is also interviewed, as well as staff from the landfill who help provide context. It's well produced and does a good job of outlining the challenges we face. And there are lots of shots of around town, which of course shows Staunton as an idyllic small town. The very first episode aired March 9th? Tonight, it's airing right tonight. And that's about Jones Garden, correct? Okay, so that's also exciting. Episodes can be streamed on their app, the VPM app, if you can't watch the show on television. Finally, this is it. At the next meeting, March 23rd, I will present the fiscal year 2024 city manager's proposed budget. On that same night, there will be a public hearing on the real estate tax rate. That will kick off the budget season that will include budget work sessions on April 6th, 13th, 20th, and the 27th. There was originally a work session notice for March 30th, but that will be canceled due to the fact that on the same night, there is an economic development forum at the Blackburn Inn. More details of this will be released soon. Also on April 27th, it's anticipated that council will approve their adopted budget. There is a public hearing on the proposed budget on April 13th. I will outline all of this again in 2 weeks, so you don't have to write any of this down, I promise. We do look forward to hearing from everybody about the FY24 budget as we go through that process. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was a lot.
That was a lot.
That was a lot. I should have been watching.
Any questions for the city manager? All right.
Oh,
Let me
Mr.
just-
Robertson.
because I know a lot of the citizens here, I want to make sure I understand. In other words, because that came out in several of the emails, that you're saying that when it opens up in Verona, whenever that date will be, it will have the exact same capacity for dogs as they do.
Well, it is animals as it does today, correct, in the current shelter.
But that can easily be expanded if we can come up with the money.
Well, it can be, and I think that the point was in the current space, the shelter needs to be given a chance to be in a different space, and it is an expanded space because it has different areas. For instance, staff don't really have offices right now. I mean, it's a very limited space. So giving it a chance to operate in an adequate space to see how efficiently, is it the number correct in terms of the number of animals that it should be intaking, and then how are they moving animals out, giving them the room to do that. That will help determine, will there be an expansion necessary in the near future? There's spaces there.
Yep.
It's, as you've seen it, it's a pod type. And so there's definitely pods that could be used in the future. And it would just be a matter of funding at that point.
Thank you for that.
All right. That brings us to matters from the public. This part of City Council's agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. Copy of Staunton City Council Matters from the Public rules are available in paper form at the clerk's desk and online at the City of Staunton webpage. You are asked to familiarize yourself with these rules before commenting. Please come to the podium or begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. And with that, Matters from the Public is open. Anyone wish to speak? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Dulcie Fuqua, and I am a longtime resident of Augusta County. I have always loved and had pets in my home and in my life. I've owned several dogs from the shelter and have been an active volunteer there for years. As Staunton has ownership in the Shenandoah Valley Animal Services Center, I'd like to bring the attention to an occurrence that happened at the end of last week. I'm not a great public reader or speaker, so I'm going to be reading a little bit. Today, I'm here to talk about how a simple running at large situation with Augusta County resident Jessica Evans and her friendly pet dog, Annabelle Annie, turned into her pet losing her life within 72 hours of being in care. Annabelle Annie was spooked by a local structure fire on the night of February 28th. She ran to another property and was picked up by animal control before dawn the next day. After searching for her dog all day long, she saw a photo of her on the shelter Facebook page. On March 2nd, she called animal control to let them know it was her dog and that she wanted her dog back. Jessica was told she needed to go to the treasurer's office in Verona and pay a fee before she could get her dog back. Jessica works for Augusta County Schools as a reader's aide and only gets paid once a month. She told the animal control officer she wouldn't have any money until the 15th. At this point, he said to her the other option was to surrender her dog to the shelter. Why would an ACO suggest an owned beloved pet be surrendered to a shelter that is busting at the seams and is getting ready to euthanize for space? Reuniting the family with their pet and getting them out of an overcrowded shelter seems like a better solution. Jessica asked the ACO if she signed the surrender form, could she adopt her dog back when she had money to pay the fees? He advised her that she could. When she went to the treasurer's office to sign the form, she asked the woman there if she could adopt her dog back, and again was told yes, she could. An issue we want to explore moving forward is the lack of due process when refusing to give a resident their personal property back. Are tickets or summons being written? Do citizens have the opportunity to go to court and defend themselves against these charges? Some questions I have for you all is, why couldn't Jessica retrieve her dog, who's considered her personal property, as soon as she found her and requested her property back? I am wondering if the county can legally hold this dog in custody once the rightful owner has asked to pick her up. Can the residents receive an invoice in the mail and pay the penalty later? This brings me to the next troubling issue. The animal control officer told Jessica, your dog was found trying to get into the neighbor's chicken coop. but didn't kill or maim any of them. But if she would have, you would have been charged with felony dog at large. Not only is this untrue, but it came across as a veiled threat to the dog owner. To sum it up, this is a case where a woman was coerced into surrendering her pet by the county by using the threat of potential felony charges and leading her to believe she could not retrieve her personal property, Annabelle Annie, without paying this fee first. Annabelle only lived at the shelter for 72 hours before she lost her life. She was dog friendly, loved other dogs and children. She had an owner that wanted her back. This should have never happened. We hope this tragic situation will be the catalyst for changes moving forward. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashley Delaney. I live at 1756 Inglewood Drive. I also am not a great public speaker. I will be reading on behalf of Jessica Evans, who could not speak for herself because this is too emotional. On the night of February 28th, there was a structure fire on Hollow Road. Both dogs were barking and howling at the sirens. After all the noise was over, I went out and checked on Annabelle Annie and the other dog. They were fine. I petted them and returned into my house and went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, March 1st at 6:30, and she was gone. I sent my kids off to school shortly after. As I was getting ready for work, my boyfriend searched for her. On my way to work, we went down Augusta Springs Road looking all around for her. My boyfriend continued to look for her throughout the day. I got home around 3 p.m. and we continued to search to no avail. Around 10 to 11 p.m. that night, I looked on the Shenandoah Valley website and found her as a stray dog at large on Katy Drive, being not even a block from my home. March 2nd, I called Augusta Animal Control. My call was returned soon after by the responding ACO, who told me she was picked up before dawn on March 1st, before 6 a.m. trying to get to the neighbor's chicken. But again, she did not maim or kill any of them. And if she had, I would have been charged with a felony dog at large and go to court to replace damages incurred. He said I could pay the fines, the required fines at the treasurer's office, take my receipt to Lyndhurst and pick her up. I told the ACO that was a problem. As a county employee, she's a teacher, a reader, I think she's a reading aid for students. So she only gets paid once a month. She didn't get paid until the 15th. I was told then if I couldn't pay, I had to surrender her. I told the ACO I had to work that morning, that my son had an appointment in Verona that afternoon, and I would come and sign the paperwork. I showed up that afternoon with my 14-year-old son, filled out the paperwork with her info, such as age and breed. I asked the receptionist at the treasurer's office with my son there beside me if I could readopt her. And she responded that after the stray hold, 5 to 10 days, that would be fine. That shouldn't be a problem. I was never informed she would be subjected to being euthanized at all. I looked for her on the Shenandoah Valley website every day for updates. She just disappeared like she never existed. I woke up on Monday, March 6th and saw where she was killed. She was not aggressive. She had never bitten anyone or killed any animals. We've had her since that's September 21. This was her first time offense and the only time ever being picked up by animal control. She was a blessing to us, smart, sweet, and kind. She loved hugs and belly rubs. And what was thought to be a freedom ride was her last ride. We lost more than a dog. We lost a piece of our family. I can't find it in myself to tell my 7-year-old daughter where her fluffo is or that she was killed. What is done cannot be undone. The animal control and their shelter management chose to play pick her without a second glance, warning, or care. They have failed the communities, the rescues, the advocates, mostly my children, my boyfriend, and myself. Thank you so kindly for your support and not only getting justice for our baby, but for these other babies as well. And in speaking to Ms. Evans today, she said it might also be helpful to know that at one time she was a service dog for someone with sickle cell disease. And she would sit with my daughter through her seizures, as well as when she finally had a breakthrough with medication for them. The fact that you were told that these dogs have bite histories, I don't know why they were at the shelter for 6 months, 3 months, you know, multiple animals that were killed. If they were there and had these bite histories, why were they being put up for adoption the week before, being featured on the Shenandoah Valley page as the dog of the week, or, you know, the goofy dog of the week? this is unacceptable. If this was my dog, I would not be okay. I'm sickened for her. She should not have had to have this happen. And something needs to be done about animal control. That man has a power issue and needs to be dealt with. So that's all I have.
Mr. Kester, do you have someone?
Yes, sir.
Hold on, please. We're going to take somebody on Zoom. Go ahead. Mr. Kester, go ahead. Can you hear us?
Oops. Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. My name is Karen Magno. I live at 303 Stonewall Jackson Boulevard in Staunton, Virginia. And I've recently returned to the area to find that there is great turmoil over at the Shenandoah Valley Animal Services Center. I lived in Augusta County at the time of the severing of the contracts between the municipalities and the Augusta Regional SPCA. So I was present for the transition over to the Lyndhurst facility, and it was supposed to be a temporary facility. And then the next thing we were told that the city of Waynesboro had purchased it. And then before you know it, they were doing additions and it looked pretty permanent to us. So I'm really happy now that I've returned to the area to hear that they are going to relocate to a more substantial and more centrally located shelter, because as we know, there are, points in Augusta County that people have to come from that can be upwards of an hour's drive to the Lyndhurst shelter. So I think that the idea of improving the location is wonderful. However, I have some concerns about this new facility. I'm a little concerned about the transparency of the blueprints or the actual plans that exist currently. It would be something I think that the public is entitled to see, especially those of us in animal welfare. We have a lot of knowledge about what works and what doesn't work in a shelter environment. One of the most important things canines need is indoor-outdoor kennels. They need that access out to the exterior so that they can go in and out within their kennel. And I was told initially that that was not going to happen. And that's very disappointing. There are other features to kenneling that most of us in animal welfare would love to see, and that's co-housing in the shelter, which means placing animals together in a kennel who get along. If you come in with a bonded pair, they can go in together, that sort of thing. It does worry me that we are moving laterally in terms of the size and the number of kennels. It makes me worry about how long it will take to build additional kennels if we're already being told there isn't enough funding there to do that right now. We have a lot of concerns, and I think that they could be allayed in a lot of ways if the community, the robust animal welfare community that this region is very, very fortunate to have, if we could have a little more transparency with regard to what it is we as a community are going to end up having in this new multi-million-dollar shelter that we are all paying for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
My name is Stacy Morris. I live at 220 North D Street in Staunton, Virginia. I am speaking tonight on behalf of Amy Swope and with Blue Ridge Canine Safe House. She couldn't be here, so I'm reading her statement. Let me start by saying I'm very appreciative of our civil servants and their personal sacrifices they make to serve our community. My own family has benefited from the services our community provides. With that said, I have a very serious concern. I am here tonight to address the disservice done to our community member, Jessica Evans, and the egregious death of her dog, Annabelle. First of all, I want to point out that the entire situation could have been avoided had the county not implemented an accepted procedure which steps outside the law, forcing constituents to either surrender or leave their animals at the shelter when they can't pay their fines. According to Article 1 of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution of Virginia, no person shall be deprived of his life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. According to Virginia Code 326545, Annabelle is or was the property of Jessica Evans. Miss Evans was never afforded due process. She was never given a written citation, never told what her fines and fees would be or for how much they would be, or for how much they would be. This faulty system needs to be addressed so it is congruent with the methods used throughout Virginia. Her dog was her property, and her property was held with no citation and no due process. Additionally, I feel it is necessary to point out that every single person that had a decision-making matter in this process failed a fellow county employee, Miss Evans, and her dog, Annabelle. The county failed Miss Evans by not implementing this fine, which she could not immediately pay, and offering her no other option but to surrender her dog. This fine could have been billed and paid later at a later date, similar to any other fine in the county. The Augusta County Control Officer failed Miss Evans by misleading her to believe that she could be arrested and charged with felony charges for her dog at large. Power. Late thing. Treasurer's office failed Miss Evans when they told her that she could surrender her dog and retrieve it 10 days later after a stray hold, which would no longer exist upon surrender, but did not acknowledge that her dog could be legally euthanized in the meantime. The shelter director failed Miss Evans by not educating himself on the behavioral aspects of what is an acceptable reason for euthanasia at a low-kill community shelter. The shelter staff failed Miss Evans when they chose her dog to euthanize amongst the group of dogs that need to be killed that day to make space for newcomers. A healthy, social dog who would have been deemed moderately easy to rehome in the animal welfare world. Anybody who knew about the situation, who did not call wrong by its right name, failed Annabelle and failed Miss Evans. Civil servants have a responsibility to their community members to stand for what is right and be trustworthy and follow state codes. This situation is shameful. My request tonight is that Augusta County extinct the old policy, accepted policy, requiring citizens to pay fines before collecting their animal from the shelter. And there is a packet, which I do not have, that they put together, and it can be emailed to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kesker,
Yes, sir.
caller, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Rose, and I'm actually calling from the other side of the mountain. And my concerns that I wanted to express revolve around pretty large legal trouble that some folks are going to find themselves in if people don't corroborate the details of how these 4 dogs came to be put down. Most of us who are sane understand that euthanasia is part of an open intake shelter operation. It is going to happen, but 4 at once, allegedly 3 with bite histories. Some, I've heard it said in multiple places on Facebook and other social media, were staff bites. And if that is the case, were all of those bites properly reported to the health department in that jurisdiction? Were all of those animals placed on a bite quarantine? Were any of them vaccinated currently for rabies? And God, I hope, and I mean no offense to Mrs. Evans when I say this, but I am a very blunt person. I hope none of the employees were nipped by the Roddy before she was put down, because there's no way to find out if she had rabies because she's gone.
Eileen, she's still there.
Okay.
Anyone else? Good evening.
My name is Paige. I am a resident in Augusta County. I am a business owner here in the city of Staunton, and I am also the president and executive director of a local nonprofit rescue that specializes in pit bulls. So I want to start by saying that there is no such thing as a no-kill shelter. That's a term of endearment that makes people feel better, but it's unrealistic. All shelters kill. No-kill means that adoptable animals are not killed, but the requirements for being considered adoptable are different for each facility. With this being said, were the 3 dogs that had been at the shelter for an extended period of time able to be safely placed in the community? I have no idea. But were they failed by the current system? Absolutely. If these dogs were a threat to society, why was Texas Pete posted on the SVASC website on February 11th as the nice dog of the week? I have the picture here for you. With a cute little photo. If Shep was considered dangerous, why was he listed last week, just days before his execution, as the naughty dog of the week, available for adoption to the general public as, and I quote, has been mouthy lately, but does have a lot of potential and just needs to be worked with? Both kennel stress and behavioral euthanasia are very real. However, the death of the 4 dogs last Friday is directly attributed to poor management of the dogs and lack of utilization of resources. Rescues and long-term volunteers, including myself, have been ostracized. Dogs are not being assessed for placement. Dogs are not being promoted for adoption or rescue. Applications aren't being processed in a timely fashion. Volunteers and staff are not being trained. Dogs are not getting the exercise and mental stimulation they need to be able to survive in a shelter environment. Basic immunizations and vet care are being overlooked. Trainers available to come evaluate dogs are no longer being utilized, and photos and bios are not being updated. While the CAT program at SVASC continues to thrive under Tracy's care, the dog program is failing miserably, and those 4 dogs paid the ultimate price last Friday with their life. Long-term steps that are needed for change. An advisory committee needs to be selected for implementation of shelter policies and procedures, proper training of staff and volunteers, and input on all new hires going forward. This committee should have a representative from all aspects of animal welfare that have extensive experience with shelters. Additional staff and training are needed to get the dog program back on track. A training program should be created, approved, and implemented by the advisory committee for all staff and volunteers. Owner meetings and shelter planning should be moved to a time in the evening when constituents are able to attend and give their input. If anyone is aware of a verbal or written policy that the shelter staff has that prevents them from listing dogs of, is anyone here aware of a written or verbal policy that prevents shelter staff from listing dogs at risk of euthanasia or emergent situations where they may be facing euthanasia for space? If there is a written or verbal policy that can be shared with, on what can be shared with the public that limits staff from sharing urgent needs and animals at risk of euthanasia, that needs to be changed immediately. The community has always stepped up when asked for help, and as a concerned taxpaying citizen, we deserve to know what's really going on in the shelter. There are numerous professional trainers that will evaluate animals to assist with the decisions on training, availability for adoption or rescue, and consultation prior to behavioral euthanasia. These individuals have volunteered their time in the past, but the kennel manager no longer contacts them. When Erin was there, she took advantage of these opportunities and saved so many lives by being proactive, not reactive. A professional evaluation is beneficial to the dog, the shelter, potential adopters, fosters, and rescues in being able to find an appropriate home. It also helps to reduce the risk of placing a dog into the wrong home. Vet care, vaccinations, and inoculations are not happening in a timely fashion for dogs at SVASC. There needs to be a protocol created and implemented by the advisory committee that ensures that dogs are getting the proper care and vaccines needed to operate a municipal shelter and keep both the animals and staff as safe as possible. Spay and neuter of shelter animals should be done as soon as appointments are available. If there is a contract with the SPCA clinic, it needs to be terminated immediately. One clinic does not have the ability to effectively support the community and the municipal shelter. Additional clinics should be utilized to help ensure that shelter pets are altered and can be moved out of the shelter in a timely fashion. A new shelter costing $3 million without any increase in capacity for animals is a complete waste of taxpayers' money. The combined average growth for the 3 municipalities in the last 11 years is 6.9%. How on earth does a state-of-the-art shelter with no additional space make sense to anyone in this room? Design plans should be analyzed to ensure the facility will have more functional space in addition to kennel space. I believe that Karen has already provided detailed information on effective shelter designs to maximize enrichment opportunities and minimize stress, along with the statistical data to support them.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Yes, sir. I have a packet of information to give to everybody that has all of this in it, along with ways to prevent behavioral and space euthanasia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Callie, we have somebody online.
No, sir.
Anyone else we should speak?
Hello, my name is Robin Hopkins. I live on Village Drive in Waynesboro. I've been volunteering at the shelter since August, and I started fostering my second dog with them in November. He was with me 5 months, but he was finally adopted 2 days ago. I want to start by recognizing that there are many awesome staff members and volunteers at SVASC. However, many of the lower level staff have been failed by the shelter because they are not receiving adequate training on how to handle the dogs properly. This is a liability for the government for their safety, but also contributing to the issues that led to the events on Friday. I also want to stress that most of us here today understand that animals at shelters will be euthanized sometimes, but the 4 dogs that were put down were the result of months of mismanagement, and that is what needs to be addressed. I'm going to highlight the frustrations I've experienced as a foster for the shelter for the past 5 months, because it should shed some light on how we got to this point. And I'm only going to speak about things that I have direct knowledge of. The dog I was fostering was not a good fit in my house, and it started becoming problematic towards the end of January. I let the shelter know that he needed to be moved into a different foster home. They sat on 3 applications to adopt him that I am aware of that were also great fits for him for too long, causing the applicants to move on or sometimes just find a different dog through a different network. During the 5 months that I had him, there was also just 1 adoption event. 1, and it was organized by a volunteer, not a staff member. I personally started reaching out to rescues because I had no confidence that the shelter was doing it. Again, hopefully this part of my statement begins to give you insight into why dogs have been sitting there for so long, leading to behavioral problems and capacity issues. In addition to the frustrating experience that I've had with my foster, I was also unable to take a different dog out for the day multiple times because her vaccines were not up to date. Perhaps the most troubling part of that is that I was the one that brought the staff's attention to this fact. The shelter did not notice that her vaccines were not up to date. We need people in important roles to have experience and training We also need people who are qualified to make behavioral assessments to play a role in the future when decisions about euthanasia need to be made. A final note about the Verona location. I've written this to the Board of Supervisors at Augusta County as well as the city manager in Augusta, but I'm really interested in hearing what criteria will be used to determine when we might actually expand to get more kennel space. We're being told that there is that space available to expand into. So we're constantly at crisis capacity in this space that we're not going to actually get any increased space. So what is the criteria to actually expand the space? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kester,
No, sir.
go ahead, please.
Jane Frazier from Augusta County. I am a long-term volunteer at the shelter, and I have actually volunteered there since 2012. And I just want to reiterate, there is a history of constant crisis, we're full all the time. I mean, we've always been skating on the edge, and this time, well, we fell off. And because of more competent management in the past, we were able to work with rescues, to work with shelters, to find spaces for dogs that were troubled, to make intelligent decisions about why these dogs, if behavioral euthanasia was the absolute last resort. And so I'm saying, if we are spending $3 million on a new shelter, and there is I am aware of at least an 11-year history of overcrowding and living life on the edge over and over and over again, and to not increase capacity just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for coming.
Mr. Kester,
No, sir.
anyone else?
For your grace earlier.
No problem.
So my name is Brittany Patterson. I live in Waynesboro. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my husband, Steve Patterson, who couldn't be here tonight because he's taking care of our son, who's not quite old enough for this yet. But we felt like one of us needed to be here. I'd first like to say I do not claim to be an expert in any field, but I am a concerned citizen that works in our community with our local pets and has a genuine concern with not just the management of our local shelter, but the voices actually being listened to when it comes to protecting the rights of animals and making decisions about animal practices in this county. I myself grew up in Frederick County, Virginia, and my husband grew up in Nelson County, Virginia. I moved to Staunton when I was 17 years old, and I chose to stay here as an adult and build my life here. One thing that attracted me to this area was our community. We always seem to come together the most when it matters, and this is a time to rally and help protect lives of souls that don't have a voice. My husband and I own a pet care service, and we service Waynesboro, Staunton, and Augusta County. That being said, I cannot stress enough that our population is growing, and to think that our pet community will not grow with it is short-sighted. Our community is already struggling with the lack of pet care, and it's just going to continue with the growth that has filled our area. We absolutely must be better equipped to help the animals that come with that growth for any situation, whether it being they are lost and need to find their way home, or pets that have been abandoned. The miscommunication that caused Miss Evans to lose her dog Annabelle was clearly caused by a huge lack of communication, not just on the animal control officer, but our staff, shelter, and management. Let me be clear that these people that work in our shelter every single day do not deserve to have the blame solely for what has happened here. The volunteers and employees, I do believe, do their best, but sometimes when you're overworked and have limited resources, your best will fall short. There was a lot of testimony last night of concerns of the new shelter being built will not have any more capacity for these animals. The fact that we just had to euthanize 4 dogs for space, because ultimately that is what this was about, means that this upcoming plan absolutely needs to be reviewed and possibly revised. The claims that these dogs were euthanized for aggression seems to not be justified based on Facebook posts stating the complete opposite shortly before they were killed. One of the 4 had a home, and because of the current practices was unable to ever make it back to the people that loved her, all because of technicalities and blatant lies told to Miss Evans. If that dog would have If that dog would have not have already had an owner, we might not all be here today. And those 4 lives may have been swept under the rug like they never mattered. These living creatures matter, and our current policies and procedures have failed them. I'm requesting a few things to be considered. After continued testimony and complaints of our current animal control officer, some sort of investigation or retraining should be brought on this animal control officer is approaching people in situations. Last night was not the first time I've heard disturbing stories of this officer, which in itself to me is disturbing. I highly recommend the council take a look at current policies and procedures when it comes to paying fines and citations, and also consider streamlining payment. I also think when making these policies, it should be noted that in the state of Virginia, a dog is personal property, meaning our local government should not have the authority to hold these pets and threaten their constituents in this way. A simple citation or bill can be given just like so many other fines in our state. Let's remember that things happen, and cats and dogs both get spooked, they go missing. And if you have an owner that genuinely tried to get their pet back and it happened for the first time, that needs to be taken into consideration. The entire reason Miss Evans didn't get Annabelle back was because she's only paid once a month, and the shelter would not release her pet until she paid her fees. If our shelter is already overrun, that procedure does not make any sense. I can understand when someone has multiple instances of their pet getting loose and causing issues. However, that is not the case for all pet owners. I also request that this council if they have a part in building the new shelter, that there's continued thought and revision on the new possible shelter that can be very beneficial if done right in our community. We have an amazing set of animal advocacy groups in Central Virginia. We should be taking advantage of their knowledge, advice, and networking for these animals. We can do this if we all work together, but we need support of our local government to do so. And lastly, I believe that Ms. Evans deserves a genuine apology for the suffering she has had to entail over losing sweet Annabelle in such a short period of time when fighting so hard to get her back. The system failed her and her family and Annabelle, and that deserves to be acknowledged and not just paired with excuses. Thank you for letting me speak tonight and voice my concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kessler.
No, sir.
Anyone else? Welcome.
Hello, I'm Renee Clark. I'm with Cat's Cradle. I think I've spoken to you guys before. I've been with animal rescue since the start of this shelter, and actually prior to this shelter. So many, many years. I don't want to say how many because it'll give my age away. But I've seen numerous executive directors, I've seen numerous staff. And the one thing I want to tell you guys, and I've spoken to you, some of you before, is that I'm always saying, we're a resource. We're here to help you. So also to talk about fiscal responsibility, that help comes with private donations, not taxpayers' dollars. And last night at Augusta County meeting, we filled the room. I hope you guys watched that video. And there were numerous rescue groups there offering assistance, offering financial funds, offering behavioral stuff free to the localities. The reason I bring that up is we've attended many of the meetings, the owners' meetings. They are during the day. They're difficult for many people to get to. But truthfully, we feel like we might have a more receptive audience with you guys. So that's why we're coming back. We came one other time before, but the rescues have to know what's going on. So I brought up last night that I set a social media policy where there's almost fear to let the staff post when they're in need. After everyone had left, I think they discussed that there wasn't an official social media policy. I think policy was my use of the word. There is a generalized understanding and fear of staff posting things on social media, which totally get that. You don't want, someone posting crazy stuff on there. But I also think that we have said, and Leslie can, know that we have said this, we want more transparency. There's a lot of good stuff you guys are doing. There's a lot of good stuff the shelter is doing, but we've got to figure out a balance and some type of reasonable understanding, if you don't want to call it a policy, where if they are out of space, the public needs to know, the rescues need to know, social media is the most accessible way to get the word out. The media is the most accessible way. Telephone calls. We have again, Cat's Cradle. You have an awesome person in Tracy Meadows. We've said that numerous times. But truthfully, what the dog people are feeling is what cat groups have felt forever. I love dogs and cats equally. But historically, cats were the ones that they don't have a high return to owner rate. So I would argue that if someone wants to claim their animal, cat or dog, which I've been involved financially helping people claim their cats because they couldn't afford it years ago, it saves taxpayers dollars. You don't have to house them. You don't have to feed them. Now, I'm not talking about dangerous dogs. I'm not talking about, people, dogs that are running large all the time and historically have always been a problem. That was not the case in this lady. There were no prior complaints. So let's find a way to make it easy for people to get their animals back. I argue, here's your animal, take it back. We don't want to pay to keep it in the shelter, and potentially we definitely don't want to kill it. So I just reach out and say, I do think, we run people around multiple locations. Again, I know it firsthand because I help these people get their cats back. You go here, then you got to go to Lyndhurst. Electronics good. If you can't make it one way, you can have 3 different card readers. But I argue someone presented the idea of the billing, everything else is billed. Maybe they will not pay, I don't know, but you can deal with that in other means instead of having to house their animal or potentially do something else. The social media, maybe all the localities can just say, hey, in a professional way, let's all agree that if they are running out of space, let's agree to let the public know and the rescues know on social media. If we need something, let's agree to let the public know if we can't cover it. And that's what we did for a while. We did it in a group outside of the official thing before, when the shelter was having trouble with things like washing machines and, different things. The group came together and we provided that, at no cost. So I want to just say again, we are not looking to rake anybody over the coals. We have repeatedly said we want to help, but there's got to be a way too where that help is welcomed. And I don't know that many of the rescues feel that that has been embraced. And that's not the shelter staff in any way. And I do think the shelter staff need some more training in behavior and safety with dogs, because from what the videos I've seen, they didn't look that dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kessler,
Yes, sir.
caller, you can go ahead. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead,
And-
please.
Thank you. My name is Becky Harmon. Pardon me, I'm outside right now with my own dogs. I'm an Augusta County resident. I work for a business in the city of Staunton. One of the suggestions, I'm sorry, I'm walking my dog. One of the suggestions that I have would be, if you look at the social media posts of where dogs in particular, cats as well, but dogs are picked up, and you look at the neighborhoods that these dogs are picked up in, they're coming from families. These families cannot afford to bail their animal out of jail. I believe a billing system is possible. Anything can be done online today. It doesn't have to be 3 separate things. I know the pound or the shelter was not originally planned to handle billing or any kind of money issues, but it's something that could easily be done as an invoice and presented within a 30-day. And as Renee said, there are ways of collecting it. We all know they can take your taxes for child support. They can take taxes for your tax refund for other unpaid city and county reasons. But I think that's something that seriously needs to be looked at, as how can we fix this? I think that the majority of our population right now over the last several years is all living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm paid twice a month. I'm a state employee, paid twice a month, and I get, what it's like to bail your animal out of jail. I've had to bail one out of jail many years ago, and the SPCA was at the original facility behind the old Food Line behind Food Line on West Beverly.
There has to be a way to fix it. And that's what I think that we need to focus on is how to fix it. A billing system, the person can come get their animal and pay within 30 days. An invoicing system is not that hard. You've got a lot of computer IT people in your reach. The county does, the city of Waynesboro does. To put those three people together and come up with a system, I think that's a route to take and to consider at least. Thank you so much for your time. I still support the shelter. I don't know hardly anybody working there anymore. I don't volunteer like I used to, but I still support them. I think the move is great. I still like to see more space for the dogs, but I think if we can move them out quicker and back with their families, that's where we need to focus on doing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lance Barton, and I'm from Oak Hill Drive. I'm the Director of Habitat for Humanity, and I am compelled to say that I am incredibly impressed by the enthusiasm for this particular cause. I can only dream and hope that I would be a part of a group that would have that same passion for housing, that same passion for securing our African-American history in our community. And tonight I heard that Ophi Kyer was here to talk about just that subject. And I really look forward to hearing that. Thank you.
Your wish is answered.
There's an introduction. Ophi.
Wow.
Welcome.
Well,
Did you
good
plan
evening.
that?
Yeah,
Did you
wasn't
plan that?
expecting that. No, I didn't. So I'm Ophi Kyer, 301 Yount Avenue, Staunton, Virginia. And I'm going to start with, I'm the founder and member of Building Bridges for the Greater Good, which is now 12 years old. And we have, over those years, tackled some of the hard issues from the assassination of Trayvon Martin to food insecurities, to the incarceration rate of African Americans. And last year, well, actually we started it 3 years ago before the pandemic, we worked on a project called What We Lost. What We Lost went back and did the research on the fact that Central Avenue to Augusta Street, Frederick to Pump Street was a Black business district in the early 40s and 50s. It was in 1960 when the city of Staunton moved forward, as most cities did, with urban renewal and bulldozed the entire 4 blocks. And for urban renewal, in which we now have 3 banks, and I think a Hardee's, and the other 2 buildings were there. But tonight, I'm here to talk about Uniontown. And with Uniontown, our board has decided that this year, we will be taking up Uniontown and talking about What We Lost, Part 2. I'm sure many of you have heard a lot about Uniontown lately. It's in everybody's conversations. But Uniontown, and I want to first thank Dr. Julius Gaines Jr. for a phenomenal book called Old Uniontown, Glances Backwards. I was given this book 3 weeks ago to read, and I'm going to tell you I was highly ashamed of myself because I didn't know this history. In this day and age, we are working so hard to suppress other people's history that this should not be allowed. I went to school with the people that lived in Uniontown, had no idea what they went through. In the year of 1880, on June the 3rd, a group of Black citizens marched to Uniontown, east of Staunton, to commemorate the Union soldiers that were killed during the Civil War. They're there because the city of Staunton would not allow them to be buried in the city of Staunton. From that point, Uniontown began to develop into a thriving neighborhood of African Americans and others. So it was a mixed community. There were 64 heads of households in Uniontown at the time. Actually, I'm sorry, at the 1920 census. That means there were 64 homes. Now there are still 69 lots left at Uniontown. There are only 11 people living in Uniontown. This to me is an atrocity because in 1960, the city council actually during the same period of time that they demolished the area up here, rezoned Uniontown to light industrial. which meant that nobody else could build a house in Uniontown, and they couldn't remodel or add on to their existing homes. If you go, and my time is flying fast, so somebody might have to take my notes. If you go through Uniontown now, it will look like it has been bombed. There are literally houses with trees growing up in the middle of it. There are foundations left with no existing house. There are front walls, and it's a shame because there's in excess of 20 to 40 acres of land there. Now, my goal, and I'm speaking for me because I've talked to people from Uniontown and their opinions differ with what they'd like to see. We, of course, are not a monolith. We each have our own thoughts on what should be done. But my goal is for a public-private partnership to be developed in where the city, developers, Habitat for Humanities, the Housing Authority all come together with a plan to restore Uniontown. Now, I want to thank you for the funding last week for the soft study that you're doing, but it must go much farther than that. The study for the water and sewer is somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.4 million. Uniontown is going to take $10 to $20 million to bring back, but it can be done because we did Newtown over here to where homes were taxed at their current value when they were rehabbed, and they sold for $300,000 or more, and the people only paid on that. We did it at Staunton Crossings. We did it for the Frontier Culture Museum in abating their taxes so that the buildings, the restaurants we see on the front row now are there for us and also beginning to bring in revenue to the city of Staunton. We did it for the villages. We did it for the Stonewall Jackson Hotel in a public-private partnership in which the purse singers, Amada Hoffer, and the city were all partners in this glorious hotel we have with the conference center. And I see my time has run out. I did have a list of things I think we need to do, but maybe one of my other colleagues can read that list for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chester, we have anybody?
Yes, sir.
Caller, go ahead. Caller, can you hear me? Still there, Gunner?
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Kenneth Venable. I live at 306 Ann Street here in Staunton, Virginia. And I would love to have been there tonight, but I've had eye surgery, so the doctor told me to take it easy. But as the new president of the NAACP branch here in Staunton, I'm very concerned about Uniontown. And I'm also supportive of Mr. Opie Kyer, building bridges for the greater good. And also that we're going to also work together to look at what's going to happen to Uniontown. I was very upset probably last week when I rode through Uniontown. And it just hurt me a lot to see that the original bridge was taken out in 2001. And this is 2023, which is 22 years later. And it was unbelievable for me to ride through that area. It reminded me of the days when I was in the military down in Biloxi, Mississippi, where the roads were just crumbled up, where you could almost bottom out your car. And to think that Uniontown is a part of Staunton, Uniontown is historic Black neighborhood, and we have to take care of all of Staunton, regardless of whether it's the West End or the East End. And when I look at Uniontown, and I think about Richmond Road, which is the gateway, as we say, coming into Staunton, that is a historic area that has to be preserved. And we, far as NAACP here, will be working to make sure that everything is done correctly, far as Uniontown is concerned, and to revitalize that, to preserve what can be preserved. But we call Staunton the Queen City, historic Staunton. Well, Uniontown is historic. And I hope that we take it to heart, because I look back on it. I went to school with the Crawfords. I went to school with the Gaines. I went to school with the Wormsleys. I went to school with the Yanceys. And guess what? We walked to Uniontown from Staunton and walked to school, met each other. So I have a vested interest in my friends and families over all these years. And hopefully that we can sit down. Also, I know that the consultant is looking at everything, which as president of NAACP, I'll be talking with the head person with the consultant firm to make sure we understand everything, but also to make sure that those landowners know everything and make sure that they know their options as landowners. Because in today's time, a lot of things are done so swiftly, and a lot of times residents do not understand what's going on. So we want to make sure that everything is done correctly, and we'll make sure that the city understands that Uniontown is a part of this city and it must be preserved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes. My name is Denise Wormsley, and I live at 806 Patton Street, and I've lived in Uniontown my whole life. And I guess I'm just somewhat skeptical of what that's actually going to be, what's going to happen in Uniontown, because of the whole process of when it was zoned industrial. There was a reason for that. And the city of Staunton, they annexed all that property all the way down to where Staunton Crossing is. They couldn't annex anymore. Okay, but when they annexed Uniontown, they didn't, it was still residential. And there were people, I was one that lived in a house that did not have indoor plumbing. And at that time, they didn't make any effort to, we had septic, they didn't, make any effort to put down sewer lines and water lines and all like that. Okay, all those years. Now you look at Richmond Avenue, all around Uniontown is all developed. It's mostly business, of course, but there were homes all down Richmond Avenue, but they're gone now. But here's Uniontown right here, still, living back in the 60s before they, and a lot of people moved, a lot of children, like Kenneth was saying, like a lot of people, younger people, the children of the parents, like my parents, they moved out of Uniontown because the condition there, but a lot of them actually, they went to college and they went where there were good jobs, where they could make a good living. And so that took them out of Staunton, like that. So, but I'm just very suspicious of the whole process back then, because back then, it was like, you had your bankers and your lawyers and your real estate people all in cahoots together. I call them the country club set. They knew what they were doing, okay? And so, and the last meeting that we had about what was supposed to happen in Uniontown was a year ago this month. So I want to know, I think Mr. Rhodes is gone. I want to know what's going on. We sat here and listened to this whole presentation from Mr. Johnson about installing, and it was going to run down towards Statler Boulevard and all this kind of stuff. But we haven't had a meeting since then. Our understanding that we're going to get grant money and money from President Biden's infrastructure. I don't know. Someone brought up at the time about we need more housing for, housing, like I call it Section 8 housing, low income housing. Okay, so what's been happening since then? We haven't had another meeting. Nobody's called, send us letters saying we're going to discuss what's going on. Anybody up there know? What's the holdup? Where's the sewer line? Where's the water lines? I brought up the issue of the land over there, about rocks, because they got the rock quarry. Everything in Staunton on that end of town is over rocks. I even told him about, I have a sinkhole in my driveway. and I gotta fill it back in because I talked to him about sinkholes and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, so when are they gonna start digging? Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good long evening. Yeah. My name is Moonyin Jackson, and I'm actually here standing in the gap for my friends, all of us with my age grew up together. We grew up during the time of segregated schools, and so we all were friends, buddies, playmates, and school chums. And it is real important to me to be supportive of all issues that relate to the preservation of the African-American experience, which means lands, buildings, and the actual legacy. But what I want to do is to tell you the end of what Mr. Kyer was saying, because he has been in the forefront of organizing this effort. And so he has some points that he wants to make sure that the mayor and council consider and act on. Okay, and here we go. Steps for redevelopment of Uniontown. Complete the study by meeting with owners and other parties. Restore residential zoning to prevent further destruction through light industrial zone. Water and sewer should run through the neighborhood, throughout the neighborhood. Repair roads to city standards, which would include streetlights. Replace the bridge from National Avenue to Anthony Street. Develop public-private partnerships, and he gives some examples as Housing Authority, Habitat for Humanity, VHDA, DHCD, FHA, Habitat for Humanity, and other lending and grant programs and private developers. Historical designation for the town area is real critical, because once you have that designation, you can't just do whatever you want to do. So I think we all know that. So that's should be step 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, restore existing homes to their original glory, then move the owners back into their homes. Build new homes on existing lots that would be comparable to what was there years ago. Use mod rehab program to allow for taxes to be affordable to those currently there and new homes that are developed. Opie, anything else? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kester, do we have anyone else?
No, sir.
Anyone else from the audience? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nitch Narduzzi, South Jefferson Street here in Stanton. It's been a quick minute since I've been here to address council. I was paying attention to your work session earlier today when you had Lydia Campbell come to speak to you about the Valley Homeless Connection. Love Lydia. She works really hard every day with a heart for the people that are consumers of their services. I know that you had someone here speaking on behalf of the mission. I know you've reached out to the Warm shelter. And what I want to reiterate is I was here 6 months ago telling you that Staunton needed a low barrier cold weather shelter. 6 months ago, I was here to say that. And I do know that Leslie reached out to Valley Community Services Board to see if that was on their agenda, and it was not. So the issue got dropped. What I'm asking you to do as council members is not just to reach out to service providers that are well established here in the community, doing their jobs as they can do them, restricted by the policies that they have in place, because there are people slipping through the gaps that won't get services regardless of how much you fund these service providers that are already in place. I would like for you also as council members to reach out to me. I'd like for you to become a mentor to one of the families or people that I'm working with, so that you understand how very difficult it is for them to access the services that they need. I've dealt with families living at the mission who I've had to provide transportation for to Valley CSB so that they can do their intakes. I have to show up at 7:30 in the morning, a half an hour before they open, in hopes that they get a slot that day. If they don't have a slot open, I have to take them back the next day and then the next day. I have sat with that family in my car for 2 hours because they don't want to go back into the mission where they're surrounded by people and they don't have a moments of peace. I've dealt with people being turned away from the mission, not because they want to turn people away, but because the policies in place prevent them from providing services. 2 times it has been older people with disabilities because they can't climb into a top bunk. They are putting elderly people with disabilities on the street. So I have to go and scoop them up and beg people to fund a hotel room for them for a night, for 2 nights, so sometimes 7 nights before I can get them hooked back up into services that are available for them. I've dealt with young women who are with children living in campers in our city, hidden right in our communities, that have no heat. They don't have access to the proper food that they need if they can't cook. These are things that I need you to see and feel in person, not just from up there on your dais. I need you to walk alongside these families that are in crisis and they're suffering so greatly. And then I need you to understand why this is happening. Because a view from up here, you really don't see it. You don't feel it. You're not meeting them where they're at. And it allows for you sometimes to maybe contribute to the stigma of mental health disorders, substance use disorders, great stigma out there. I've heard it throughout our community, not in our backyard. Why don't they have a job? They are just lazy. They don't like the food that we give them. Why aren't they grateful? This is a huge problem. And I need our city council to lead by example with compassion and empathy and action. Thank you.
No, sir.
Anyone else? All right. Well, I want everybody to keep in mind that we have 8 days to go to St. Patrick's Day. So, let me leave you with a closing Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the rain fall gently upon your fields. May the sun shine warmly upon your face. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night. Meeting adjourned.